So, Kate, thanks ever so much for joining us. I know that you are an ex-police officer. Actually, you used to be a police officer, and actually, full disclosure, we did used to work together at the Met for the learning and development department. I was a contractor, and you were a proper copper, as they say. So, would you mind if we sort of just a bit of background? How long were you I mean, I know you're not a police officer now, but how long were you in the police force for?
For 21 years, which makes me feel so
Wow.
old. Yeah, I joined at 19, hence my youthful looks. Yeah, I joined at 19. I started my career in Southeast London as a police officer, response officer, Bobby,
Yeah,
whatever you
yeah.
want to call it. And then did different things, and then we met, and then I left.
Yeah, you left because of me. That's where
Yeah,
we met,
that
and
was
then you
that was
left.
the straw that broke the camel's back, to be honest.
Thanks very much for watching this episode. If you've got a question or a particular topic you'd like to have covered, please leave a comment in the comment section down below. Like the podcast to make sure your question gets seen, and also subscribed to get a reminder to watch the next one. Maybe your question or topic will be covered then. Yeah. Okay. So I will tell you, you really do not look like somebody that's actually been in the same job, whether it be the Met or not, for 20 odd years, and because you look very bright and healthy. So if I may say so, maybe it's coming out of the Met that's actually done that for you. I don't know.
I think it has. I honestly think it has. And there's reasons for that as well.
Oh, okay. Maybe we can go into those in a little while as well. But anyway, so much to talk about, So can you just give me sort of like a rundown on what made you decide to join the Met, and also what made you decide did you actually retire, by the way, from the Met, or you just decided to leave?
You can't say in one breath that I look young enough and fresh enough to
that's
not been in the same job and then ask me if I've retired. They don't. They're not aligned, Martin.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Really,
It is.
you look so young for a
I didn't
retiree.
retire. I wish I retired. No, I resigned. I resigned it.
You resigned. You left. Okay, that's fair enough. All right.
I did.
So let's start from the beginning then. What made you join in the first place? As a 19-year-old, I mean, there might be a 19-year-old watching this who thinks, "Oh, I'm looking for a job. I think I might join the police." So, what made you decide to go? And what? Also, double question: what kind of people are suitable to join the police? There you go.
Okay, thank you. 2 questions.
Yeah.
So, answer the first one. I was lost. I was lost as a teenager. I didn't go to college for a little bit, and then I left. And I was doing a performing arts A level, and which does make sense when you know me. I just didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea. I wasn't living at home with my family. I was living by myself at 16, 15,
Wow.
as well. So I was really quite lost, and I met somebody who was in the Met, and it was never a career I ever thought I would be able to do.
Yeah.
People like me wouldn't join. Yeah, I just could never see myself doing that. So, it sounded like a good job, but I didn't really know anything about it. And then I met this woman, and I thought, well, if you can do it, I can do it. If you can be in the police, I can be in the police. And there was a huge recruitment campaign at the time as well. I can't remember the slogan for it now, but it was in the early 2000s. And I had to wait until I was 18 and a half before I could apply. So I was interested in joining from the age of about 17, but I had to wait until I was 18 and a half. So I worked at my local police station in their admin office.
Wow.
Learned all the lingo. I was like, yeah. And I remember learning all of the little acronyms for Hampshire Police. And that was a really lovely place to work, actually. The office was really nice. The staff were really lovely. The police officers were really lovely as well. So that was my first experience of being in the police, was actually for Hampshire Constabulary.
Oh, was it Hampshire, not the Met in the first place?
Well, as I was working in an office as an admin person at 17, waiting to be old enough to apply to the Met.
Right. So you started an admin. So you were amongst the police environment kind of thing.
Whilst waiting, yeah, I would never have thought of joining that. I would never have thought of it, but it was my application in the Met and then the wait. And I thought, well, I'll go and get some experience working in Aldershot Police Station, which is where I started, not as a police officer, but just to get some experience whilst I was waiting to join the Met.
Right. Okay. So what kind of people, I mean, these days, do you think, what kind of people would be interested in joining the police, would you say?
I think there's two kinds of people. I think there's two different pools here. And I think it's a similar type of person who would join the army or the armed forces can join the Met Police. Obviously, there's quite large differences, but there's a lot of similarities as well. But for me, I think anybody who doesn't have anywhere, that this does become quite dangerous. But I think if you are a bit lost, you need somewhere to belong. You need that team environment. You need somewhere to fit in. Then the police is a good place for you to be.
Mm.
But that can become quite dangerous because then you have that almost that you can fall into mob mentality, I think, which is partly where the problems are in the Met now. But I think it is a really good place to find who you are, what you're good at, and really develop some skills. And I think the other school of person who can join, I don't think there is a type of person. I think that you're dealing with people who are so very different. Therefore, you need very different people in the police. And actually, lack of diversity, whether that be cognitive diversity or demographic diversity, can be problematic itself. You need a rich variety of experiences in any job for it to be a successful and healthy organisation.
Right. Okay. That actually, on the subject of the diversity, not diversity, but the demographic makeup, I had a thought the other day, and that is that yes, they're trying to get more female police officers because they want to reflect the demographic makeup of London. This is for the Metropolitan Police anyway.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's more or less 50-50 males and females in London. It's actually 40. I looked at it. It's actually 51% females and 49%
women. Yeah.
Males, but more or less 50-50.
That's across the world.
Yeah. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the thought that occurred to me was that, if the aim is to get 50-50, males and females in the police, is that the right direction to go? And I know they're like constantly trying to get more female police officers. And when I was there, I saw quite a lot of female police officers. I was quite surprised. And, you know, it's pleasant to see them around. It's good to see that mixture of different genders. But the thought that occurred to me was that I then did a quick Google, and 89% of criminality is men. You know, and something like 16%. Is that right? 89 to 16%. I think it is something like that. Or 84% was down to men breaking the law and criminality or whatever. And the other 16% was down to females breaking the law. Wouldn't it be better to actually have the demographic breakdown of the police officers enforcing the law to be the same as the demographic breakdown of the people of the, am I making myself clear? Do you know what I mean?
You are, but then there's there's at least two parties involved in crime. There's the victim and then there's the accused.
Oh, right.
And I'm not for one second saying that women should only deal with female victims, because that doesn't work. And also, if you look at the cycle of criminality, at what point does that become a gender stereotype problem?
Yeah.
So, for example, women judges historically are men. And there's a gender gap there as well. And they have an opinion that women are the fairer sex, so therefore should be at home. Prison isn't a nice place for women. You shouldn't be there. You should be at home looking after the family. So you've got that gender stereotype coming from sentencing, from CPS, from prosecutors, from police officers, from society. And then on the other side of that, if you look at the stereotypes of men, it's you should know better, you should be providing for your family, why are you out committing crime? So therefore you should be in prison because of what you've done. So you've got the gender stereotype there from the judges and the prosecution, as well as society. So I think that actually it's not as simple to look at the demographics without looking the reasons why that would be the case. There's disproportionately more men in the prison service than there are women. But why is that?
Yeah,
because women do commit crime. You know, women do take drugs. Women they have very specific, pretty much crime patterns, but they do commit crime. So why are they not held accountable as much as men? Why are they not sent to prison as much as men? And partly that would be a gender.
Yeah, I think the really good point that you just made was we tend to think about who's committing the crimes, but we don't think about who's actually being the victims. And I'm guessing that there are different attributes between men and women. And I'm guessing that maybe it might be slightly more comfortable, if you like, for some victims to be spoken to by a female police officer than a male, especially if it's a female victim of, I don't know, some sexual abuse or rape or something like that. Then obviously a woman to woman conversation is probably better, I'm guessing. I don't want to sort of put any gender stereotypes on anything myself, but it seems to be logical that, if a woman's been attacked by a bloke, she would like to talk to another woman, a female police officer. That seems to make sense. What do you think of that? Is that a reasonable?
No, I really don't think it is. I think that actually it is really down to the person. There are some really horrible women who aren't soft and gentle, who can't have a kind conversation and can't be empathetic and compassionate and will be judgmental. And then there are men who are kind and empathetic and can be non-judgmental and confrontational. So there really are. And I think that that's where we huge mistakes by generalizing and expecting there to be a certain outcome if we're doing the same thing over and over again. And that is an attitude that is rife in the police. And it used to wind me up. I've been to calls where men have run away. The big 6'2" man that everybody wishes, when we have these conversations of, I'd rather be standing next to a 6'2" man if I was having a fight than a woman. Well, but they run away too. I've had women run away, female officers, and I've had men run away as well.
Right.
So it's not, it is down to courage. It's down to your own personal risk assessment as well. Those police officers would have felt very scared if they'd run away. I didn't. But there's been occasions where I haven't dealt with things how I should have because I've been frightened. And that's something we don't talk about in the police at all, is that fear.
Yeah.
But so I think that's where gender stereotypes can be really damaging. And actually that there is an argument for women having a calmer influence. Not all women, because men can as well, but men see women less as a threat. They also have that gender stereotypes being built into them as they've grown up of don't hurt women. You don't hurt women. You're a man. You're strong. You don't do that. Obviously, that does happen. But, that is certainly a tactic that can be used when trying to calm a situation down is by deploying a woman.
Well, I've just shown off my gender chauvinism, haven't I, really? I know it's not just me that thinks that. I know that there are people out there in the general public that think, why can't we get more of these big hulking brutes to be police officers? What we having these young girls sort of like walking up and down the streets, blah blah blah. I have to say, when I've seen new recruits coming in at the Learning and Development Department, and this is only for the Metropolitan Police at the moment, I have thought, it's just me getting older, I guess, but I thought, wow, some of these people do look young, not just females, I'm talking about males and females. They look quite young to be, after a short space of training, to be thrust about onto the streets, especially the streets of London, that can be quite challenging and quite dangerous. In your career, in the 20 years, what would you say would be your favourite part of policing? And if I may sort of like have a little rummage about in your less favourite side of things, but you don't have to go into those too much if you don't want to. But what would you say you liked about policing? Because if you're in anywhere for 20 years, there's got to be something you like about it, isn't there?
Yeah. And I think, as you would know, as anybody who's probably, past their mid-20s, you carry on growing and you carry on learning and you carry on developing as a person.
Yeah.
And I look back at who I was in my 20s and I had a whale of a time in the police. I did, I had so much fun, which probably isn't the answer a lot of people want, but I did. I had a great team around me. We dealt with some crazy things that were unbelievable. Some of the things that we've dealt with, good and bad, a real mix, but we dealt with it as a team and we were a good team. I missed that.
When you say crazy things, I can see sort of like these things rushing through through the projector of your memories. Name one.
Gosh. This wasn't particularly crazy, but we dealt with the Tamil Tigers who occupied Parliament Square in the 2000s, in the mid 2000s.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was a long shift, but equally so. I remember thinking, wow, I see I've made a judgment, and what I always hold my hands up and say I absolutely policed with bias. I did, and it's only when I knew really what that was that I could tackle it. And I do still, I still have biases, but I keep them in check. Those those conscious or unconscious. And I know people are sick to death of hearing about them. Certainly the forced EDI training, but I do remember actually at I can't remember what time it was. It was in the morning. Let's say it was 7 o'clock in the morning. All of the Tamil Tiger people who were there protesting would get up in Parliament Square and they clear up.
Well, who cleared
They'd
up?
clear up after themselves.
They
Pick
cleared
all
up
the rubbish
after
up.
themselves, the protesters.
Yeah. They
That's
would.
very nice
They
of
would.
them.
It's really nice of them because it's not. And I remember thinking, wow, what
They
a
remind
culture,
me of the
you know.
average Millwall supporter, actually. Yeah, clearing up after them. They do that, don't they? They're nice.
I mean, I'm used to police Millwall, and that was crazy as well in itself. And again, being really shocked by humanity of the fact that you've got these 7-year-olds dropping the C bomb around
Unbelievable.
at the fans' neck, the opposing fans. So, like, you see some real interesting sides of humanity, and it's what I guess is interesting from a personal perspective is what do you notice? So for me, I notice, the effing and jeffing from the 7-year-olds in the stand being encouraged by their dads. Yeah, call him a C word. And then you've also got the flip side of that, the Tamil Tigers who stood up and cleared up after themselves. And, every day at 7 a.m. or whatever time it was. And they would. And I look back on how I policed them and I think, I did what I needed to do, my job. They weren't really any bother. I think they broke into Parliament once or twice and scaled Elizabeth Tower.
Just for those listening, what were the Tamil Tigers? What was all that about?
So, do you know as well, I can still remember the chants. They echo in my head still.
Right.
And so much so my son also says, Tamil Tiger, freedom fighter, stop the war, stop the war. They were in Sri Lanka and they were, to be honest, and this shows my ignorance, of policing back then. We never really understood what we were doing and why, and why these people were protesting.
Yeah.
Maybe there was an assumption made that we should be looking at the news. I don't know, but the hours that we worked, we wouldn't have the opportunity to look at the news. We didn't have smartphones, so we were relying on a decent briefing of understanding why people were protesting. And I think actually, when you really think about that simplicity of understanding why people are so passionate and they're there, should be paramount in a briefing, so you can police compassionately with understanding. So I hold my hands up to my ignorance there.
So the Tamil
Tigers, give you a brief outline.
I think were the Tamil Tigers something like freedom fighters in Sri Lanka?
Yeah. And I think that Sri Lanka was being bombed and they were trying to kill all of the Tamil Tigers. But I don't know.
Right.
100%.
Anyway, and there was a sort of like a massive influx of sympathy or whatever, and there were people out on the streets. Actually, it's a bit rather like what goes on every day, in London today, isn't it, really? Because we're seeing a lot of demonstrations, that kind of thing. Do you think we should actually make demonstrations illegal?
No, I don't. I can understand the absolute tiresome job that police officers have, but I think people need to be heard and they're not being heard, and that's why they're taken to the streets.
Right. Okay.
And I think that people need to be heard, however that looks like, whether that be protesting or I don't know what the alternative is, but that's why people are there, because they feel so passionately about something. But I do think that maybe we need to, I say we, I'm not the we anymore, but maybe the police need to consider their approach and who they're using, because that's half the problem of why the police are leaving, because they're having their rest days cancelled. They're working extremely long hours in really stressful situations. Therefore, they're going to make bad decisions. They're not achieving the basic values that the Met want them to achieve. They're not going to be innovative. They can't be collaborative. There is going to be minimal trust. They're exhausted because they are working ridiculous hours. They're relentless and they're missing special occasions, and even sometimes just your weekend off or your rest days are a special occasion because you need to rest, and they're not being given the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about the way in which demonstrations are being policed, that kind of thing. And then you see it's plastered all over the news, isn't it? You see sort of like an elderly person in a wheelchair that's been holding up a placard saying Palestinian action or being in favor of Israel or whatever it might be. But especially Palestinian action, which has been proscribed organization now. How do police officers feel when they have to, move somebody on or arrest somebody that's clearly, not creating any aggro, but just because they've held up one of those placards? Do you know, what are your thoughts on that?
Is it? I
Following
don't. I
orders.
mean,
Are
I'd
they just
still
following
err on
orders,
the.
first of all? They're just sort of like doing
They
it.
are, absolutely. And because they have to police without fear or favour. But again, I do really feel that there needs to be an educational piece around why people are there and protesting. Because if you don't understand, how can you engage in a conversation with somebody? And I know that there's not always time to do that, but I've policed enough riots or public order events, I should say, that I can have a good conversation with somebody in the crowd, and a polite, respectful, two-way conversation, because I understand what's happening. But I couldn't always do that. And I think
Right.
when police have to put hands on, when they're being forceful, the whole aim of that is to stop people being injured. This person needs to be arrested or removed or whatever.
Yeah.
They do it in a way that is taught to stop people being injured. It's the most, so it looks heavy handed. You've got 7 police officers, 6 police officers on one person, but it's to stop people being injured, the person themselves and the police officers around them and the public. So it can look heavy handed, but it's non-confrontational, and it's as gentle but forceful as possible. And I think that, I forget where I was going with that. I think if you can have a conversation with people and this doesn't work with everybody because there's mental health issues, there's other alternatives, but the general population, to be able to converse and be rational and reasonable really prevents a lot of that disorder that can follow after, and that violence that can follow after.
So do you think the police should be given more time to read the news and watch news on telly and all that sort of stuff, so that in
I think
background?
I think it should be forced,
Of
because
course.
they won't read the news. Yeah, I think it should form part of the briefing before being deployed. I think there should be, this is why people are protesting with regards to Palestine. This is why it's a problem with this community, and this is the outcome we're trying to avoid. I think you missed that.
Right. Okay. So, and they're not, at the moment, they're not given lessons on what's happening.
I mean, I wasn't. Obviously,
Right.
I've been out of the police for 2 years, so maybe that's changed, but I would make a very strong recommendation that educating your officers before deployment is really important. And if you've got lack of engagement there, then that should be a red flag in itself.
Right.
If people are going, I don't care, whatever. Well, no, you're policing these people. You should understand what their purpose is.
Right. Okay.
And really.
And when it comes, because the media is always involved in all of this, aren't they? So we see what happens, when there's a demonstration, Trafalgar Square or wherever it might be, Westminster, although I'm not even sure if it's anything's allowed in Westminster Square now. But anyway, the point is that media is always there, very quick to report on what's going on, that kind of thing. And it's always very negative, isn't it? The police are doing their job because basically we all have a demographic right to demonstrate, don't we? It's a demographic right at the moment. It's all part of democracy, so-called. I'm not even sure democracy really exists, but that's a discussion for another time. But anyway, so everybody has the right to demonstrate if they want to. However, if people have the right to demonstrate, they can also, for example, they've got to organise, haven't they? They've got to organise, we're having a demonstration or such and such. But those people organising a demonstration can be arrested for organising unrest.
Okay.
It even happens. That's almost like a pre-crime, isn't it?
You're testing my legislative knowledge on
Sorry about that.
demonstrations. So I haven't got an answer. I wouldn't be able to answer that properly, but I think it sounds like civil, but I can't answer that.
I'll ask a police officer then.
Ask a police officer if you find one in the street. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a tenner if they can answer that.
Right, okay. You're on. Right, okay. I can see if I can get the commissioner on.
Yeah.
Oh, you definitely won't be able to answer it. No offence. Just a joke. No, so what I was going to say, about the media. Now, here's my thought, and I think every time I see something on the media, whether it's BBC, newspapers, all that kind of stuff, I think the media has got it in for the police. What do you think?
Well, I think that police are political pawns, aren't they? And you could.
You're saying?
Pardon?
They're political pawns. They're stuck in the middle with whoever wants to get.
Well, there's two things for this. Firstly, I do believe they're political pawns. So I believe that the papers they absolutely are biased towards whoever gives them the most money from whichever political party they want in. And I do believe that. So I think that there will be a lot of police bashing if that aids their political agenda.
Right.
100%. So I do think that they jump on the bandwagon there. However, I also think that what doesn't, and we had this discussion on LinkedIn the other day, Martin, what doesn't make the news is the good work that police officers do.
I know, that's the thing. That's one reason I'm doing this podcast. Sorry to cut across you. So it's one reason I'm doing this. Yeah.
Because that's their job and that's what they get paid to do. So it shouldn't be a shock that police officers are doing a good job and they're keeping people safe and they're arresting people and they're brave and they're courageous and they fulfill all of those things that you envisage that you think a police officer should be doing. But what does make the news is when they're abusing that power and they are committing crimes, or there is that misogyny within the workforce, or obviously the Panorama video, the Panorama program is a good example of that. So that shouldn't be happening in a police force. That shouldn't be happening. So that will be commented on because it was abhorrent, that behaviour, and it was allowed to. And there were a lot of police officers there who were upholding and challenged that behaviour. I think the DDO, the designated detention officer, said, I can't believe he said that. And you could see she was really quite angry about what had been said by the custody sergeant. However, and there are people like that, but there's also a culture that favours that behaviour, which is why it's allowed to exist. So I do think that there's a lot of policing that people don't understand. And I had a conversation with my in-laws a couple of months ago about police officers suffering with PTSD. And he said, well, why would police officers get PTSD? And I said, have you ever had to hold a dead baby? Have you had to search a dead baby that's 6 months old? No. Have you had to go and tell somebody that their loved one has just been shot because they were walking home, minding their own business? No, didn't think. Have you ever been so scared that you're about to be stabbed that it still, wakes you up at night?
Yeah.
No. So I do think there's an element of people don't understand the full extent of what policing really looks like.
Yeah.
And a lot of police officers don't understand that. I didn't understand that until I worked in learning and development because my brain stopped. My brain went, oh, you're not under threat anymore. You're not, being faced with violence every day. And then it had time to process some of those really awful things that I experienced in the police, and like calls I went to and whatever. And there's still things that I think about now, and that kind of thing, the public they're not aware of. And they should be.
Do you think they should be aware of? Oh, you just said that. They
100% should be. We do a lot of work for veterans, and rightly so. My brother's a veteran. My favourite colleague is a veteran as well. A lot of my friends are actually. I'm from a military town, so it's very military where I am. But police officers, they have similar barriers as what veterans do. They are institutionalized. They're not exposed to the outside world and corporate world. It's a whole new language you have to learn to speak. That limits their ability to be able to apply for jobs, write CVs, go into interviews. And also you are, I don't know the facts and figures around that, but you're exposed to so much more trauma than your average person that should be recognised within organisations who are employing ex-police officers. And the organisation that they work for, the police, should also. If my partner, who works for a med tech company, if she had to give CPR to someone, she's first aid trained, she would, their well-being, their employee assistance program, they'd be wrapped around her. She would be so well supported, and the police, they don't get that at all. It's just well done, right, off to the next call.
Yes, and I remember I did a podcast when I was working internally about trauma support, and I'm hoping to actually speak to the same guy more publicly so that people can actually understand the kind of trauma that police officers have to go through daily, and then go on to the next call and you wonder why they're in a bit of a bad mood,
Yeah, exactly.
And that's one of the things I would like to get out there, that police, there's a human being behind that uniform or sitting underneath that hat. I wanted to go back to the talking about the media, because you mentioned about that Panorama program that was actually it was about a month ago now, was it, or a couple of weeks or something like that? Anyway, a month ago, let's say. So basically, in that Panorama show, you had an undercover reporter that basically worked at Charing Cross. It's not Charing Cross, is it? Charing Cross. having trouble.
You got it. You got it. Get your teeth back
Having
in,
trouble with
Martin.
my worms there. Charing Cross Police Station. And I actually went there. I filmed there myself, actually, because as part of a filming project, I filmed at Charing Cross Police Station in the detention cells. So I know exactly what they're talking about. I know exactly the people they're talking about as well. Now, here's the thing, right? They started off the program, and it's an hour-long program. They started off by the program saying the Met is institutionally racist, misogynistic, and what's the other one? Everything. Sorry?
I was giving you some
No,
ideas, but
racist, misogynistic, and homophobic. Yeah, sorry, that was the other one. Yeah, you're right. So, excuse me for coughing. So
you
they
are
were sort of
excused.
saying that since the Casey review, nothing's changed. It's still just as bad as it's always been. Now here's the thing, right? It occurred to me, how would I counter that argument? It occurred to me they sent an undercover reporter in for 7 months. Right. And I worked out, I've done quite a lot of video work or whatever. And I've worked out that if you just film just, I don't know, 3 or 5 hours a day, that's 600 hours worth of footage in order to make a 1-hour documentary. Now, if I came to your house and I filmed for 7 months, I could create a documentary saying, you are always eating tomatoes, or your family does nothing but go to the loo.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Because I could
Yeah.
actually choose the story and then use the footage to make the story say what I want it to say. And that's how the media can actually work. And I wish somebody had told the commissioner to say something along the lines of, it's reprehensible what happened in that police station. But can I just say, if he took 7 months to find 4 people who were acting wrongly, then we're not doing too badly if it takes 7 months to find those kind of people. What do you
That's
think
one
of that? Is that a wrong thought? Sorry, what?
I said that's one way to think of it. And I think also it doesn't, we've mentioned this before you started recording, but there's such suspicion amongst police officers.
Yeah.
And they believe most people are DPS,
Out to get them.
are
Right,
professional
okay.
standards.
Yeah.
They will pick and choose who they build that trust with to be able to behave like that in front of people. They wouldn't behave like that in front of their supervisors. They wouldn't behave like, the chief inspector. And you see this in like any sort of culture review or surveys. The senior leaders are like 9 times out of 10, everything's fine. Those are brilliant police stations work. Everyone's happy. I spoke to Kate earlier. She's great. But the reality is, it is those behaviours are displayed in front of trusted people. No one's going to sit and review custody footage to catch somebody out. I mean, they might do now,
right.
But they certainly wouldn't have done historically. It's only if something has happened that needs reviewing that somebody would look through.
That's a good point, because it's going to take a long time of filming in order just to win their trust.
Just to win trust, yeah. And also, you might see me eating, all I eat is tomatoes, and that would be a step up than chocolate. Honestly, Martin, it would be. But you would never see me hit my wife. You would never see me hit my son. It doesn't matter how long you're filming.
Yeah, sure.
You would not catch that.
Yeah.
Because they're my values, my and how our house is. So you wouldn't ever film something if it wasn't there. Doesn't matter how long you're filming. I can categorically tell you that would not happen. So, and I think that what was said was so awful, and those behaviours were so awful. And custody suites are an odd place anyway. Regular police officers aren't a fan of going into custody suites because there's a whole hierarchical ridiculousness in custody suites where the custody sergeant is king, more often than not king. And they really speak down to the PCs who are bringing the prisoners in.
Yeah,
and that's a culture that's been there forever, certainly since before I joined.
Well, that needs to change then, doesn't it? As part of the transformation programs that are going on in the police, that kind of attitude in those particular areas needs to change. One thing that wasn't mentioned on that panorama program is they went into the very custody suite, the Charing Cross police station, where somebody literally about a year ago, where a police officer got stabbed to death. Was it that one? Was it that custody suite? There was somebody who came into the custody suite.
No,
they had a knife.
That was.
They had a knife secreted on them, and the police officer didn't do a proper pat down because he had a knife stuck in not stuck, but hidden underneath his armpit. Do you remember that?
I do, and that wasn't a knife, that was a gun in Croydon Custody
Oh, the
Suite.
Croydon Custody Suite. Okay.
Yeah, it was Croydon.
Right. It's a,
Matt Ratana, that was really awful, sad story.
yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show how on tenterhook, it's not normal policing, is it? When you bring people into custody suites, it's just a very,
No.
very, it's a kind of almost like a unique situation.
Yeah.
When you go to that, so they chose a hotbed of difficulties.
They
I am not excusing the really bad behaviour of the people that were working there.
They chose Charing Cross because Charing Cross a couple of years ago had been involved in a very similar
Yeah,
behaviour
yeah.
with the WhatsApp groups, and there was a whole group of people that
I remember
were,
that.
yeah. So that's why Charing Cross, and it's, it's recognisable, isn't it? You're not going to go down to, I know it's not open anymore, but Brockley Police Station. Where's that? Who goes to Brockley? It's,
Yeah,
at the heart of London.
yeah,
And then it's, just round the corner from Buckingham Palace.
yeah,
How the media work. They want to put that
yeah.
spin on it of relevance.
Yeah, it's a good point. Anyway, but I think the thing is that it's a very sad day, and I wouldn't have been in the commissioner's shoes to have to answer that. And it's good that they got rid of those nasty, stupid police officers that were working there. And I bet they regret their attitude now, but it's a bit too late, isn't it, for that? Anyway, okay. So, what else were we talking about? So so what were some of the poorer side of things that I mean, I know that you've got some tales to tell, and we'll probably bring you in again in the future to talk about some of those, not tales, but sort of uncomfortable situations as a female police officer that you were cast into. Do you want to go into those now, or should we talk about it another time?
No, I can do now. I like to be really transparent, Martin, as well. Like
Absolutely.
I wasn't the perfect police officer. I'm not the perfect person. I've done things that I regret as well, and I've had behaviours that I have changed, and I am accountable
You're
for.
not the perfect person.
I know it's
My
hard
goodness
for
me.
you to hear. I know it is.
My illusions are shattered. Anyway, yeah,
And I've done things and said things that I wouldn't allow now, And like I say, when certainly growing up over the last couple of decades, I think
yeah,
everybody can reflect and look at themselves, their younger person, and think, actually, you shouldn't have done that. And it was, it's very different times when I was policing as well. However, what I can say, some of the things that probably my biggest bugbear of the police and how people are treated is the over sexualization of women in the police.
yeah,
That for me is, and I'm not even just limiting this to gay women and bi women, that's a whole other thing, but just women in general.
yeah,
And the thought process behind the men who are seeking out young new women. And this happens everywhere. And I have a saying in my role now where I am, if it's a societal problem, it's your organizational problem.
yeah,
If it's happening externally, it's going to be happening internally, and it will be. So you need to make sure that you are robust as an organization in dealing with whatever those issues are, whether that be racism or poverty or whatever it is. You need to be robust to be able to deal with that and support. I don't mean in a, professional standards type of way. I mean support. I'm all so pink and fluffy now, aren't I? But is the over sexualization of women and that attitude towards female officers and female members of staff is disgusting. And that is something that it still exists now. And it existed when I joined. And I remember
have you got any better, would you say?
I think it gets better as you get older because you're less desirable as an older person. So, yeah, for me, it got better.
I didn't think of that. No, I just mean,
But for the younger women joining, no, it's not. It's not.
Or the men's head turned that way instead.
Yeah, exactly.
What I meant to say, I mean, sort of like organisationally, has it got better?
No, I don't
over
think
the time?
so. No, I don't think so. And again, I'm 2 years out, so it may have. But from my I hear the people that I still obviously communicate with inside the police, it's still very much the same. It's multi-layered, so it's not simple. And this also causes a challenge. So you've got a team of predominantly men. It's just how it is, because that's the demographic breakdown, the gender breakdown. There's majority men for multiple reasons. And the leaders then, therefore, they're majority men, and they are given courses. I'll get to my point. So driving courses are hard to come by. They are elite. Everybody wants a driving course, a taser course, a rapid entry, all of these courses. And they tend to be given to the people that fit in. They tend to be given to people who look like you. And this is known across the globe, that is a thing. Cultural bias is a thing.
If your face fits, kind of thing. Is that
absolutely. And you are, as anybody, you are, let's say you and I go out and I'm like, I'll buy the beers, Martin, like we'll have a great night. And that's our relationship. We get on really well. I'm a lovely person. You love me and I love you and I buy you beer and I'm a good girl. I'm one of the good ones.
Yeah.
And then somebody comes to you and makes an allegation. And I've also got all the driving courses. I've got all the skills on team, and says, Kate touched my bum and she sent me a tit pic, we call it, because I can't send a dick pic. I could, but it wouldn't be mine.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other effect. And then they come to you and say, oh, Sarge, Kate sent me a tit pic and it's just inappropriate. I don't know why she has, but there's nothing going on. You're then left to make a decision. I'm a good person because I've bought you a ton of drinks.
Yeah.
We've got a great relationship. I'm not like that. So that's your perception of me. And I'm also the driver, the response driver. I'm also taser trained.
Yeah.
I'm also rapid entry trained. So if you move me, you lose all of those skills and our lovely friendship. Whereas if you move the girl who's less likely to have those skills, doesn't have them, but it takes a bit longer. And this isn't across the board, but this is widely recognised. Then you're losing all of those skills. You're losing that whole police officer. You're losing that relationship, and you're gonna move the problem, which is the woman. You're not going to be moving me. You're going to be moving that problem.
That is a tricky one. That is a tricky one, isn't it, really?
It is, but then it shouldn't be. It should be, you've committed an offence. You are in the wrong. Off you go. And that's that. But that's not how it happens.
Yeah. I mean, yes.
And I've seen this.
I've got to say, I agree with you, but it's a very intricate problem, as you just pointed out.
Yeah,
because that means your unit could not perform as satisfactorily as it's meant to, because you've got rid of a star player or one of your star players, or maybe you're one of your favourite mates. Let's face it.
Exactly.
But yeah.
I'm going to give you an example that I saw. And this was, one of the things that really led for me, certainly got the ball rolling on why I left the police. And it wasn't that long ago. It's a few years ago, but still, not too long ago. I was at Hendon, and one of the members of staff had pretended he'd been out drinking with his team, with his class. So he's in a position of authority. He is teaching these new recruits, these young new recruits. And he touched this woman pretending he couldn't see and touched her breasts, right? And then dry humped her. So he was thrusting up against her in the pub. Now, firstly, you don't go out with the recruits until they've passed. Once they've passed, they're normal police officers, you can go out with them. But they're recruits, you're in a position of influence. You don't want to be seen as, giving somebody an extra pass or whatever else.
Was that female police officer a recruit?
She was a recruit, yeah. So the whole class were there and they've seen this. And a couple of them have written statements and come forward about it. So I put the crime report on, first complainant. So I'm a witness, even though I wasn't there, but I'm first complainant. So the response of the sergeants, who were all male, said, why didn't she just give him a slap and tell him to piss off? Like, he's going to lose his pension in his career now because of her.
Oh.
Like, no, it's not because of her. It's because of his behaviour.
Yeah.
Now, it got worse. It went to court. He got charged. He didn't get convicted, but it went to court. And when I got to court, normally what happens is you have your police officers who are given evidence will stick together, because you're given evidence. You don't want to sit with the defendant, right? Ever. You're sat with the police. You're on the right side of the law. So you sit with your police officers. When I got there, the defendant had 5 or 6 officers, one of which was an inspector, sat with him in uniform. They're sat with the defendant. And the victim and her colleague, who were both police officers, both brand new police officers, they'd recently passed out, well, maybe, I don't know, it takes a while to get to court. So maybe a year later, they're on response team, and they're sat by themselves looking at this boys' club, huddled around this man who didn't get found guilty, but still did that. You know, he still got convicted. So what message does that send?
Yeah.
And me, Martin, I was like, hang on a minute. And I heard them say, like, why didn't you just give him a slap? I turned around. Well, what would you do if that was your daughter? What would you do if that was your sister or your wife? Would you say the same, or would you want this man arrested and charged? There's different ways people can deal with it. And then there's the right way that you can deal with it. And if she wanted to go to court and make a statement and press charges, then she should absolutely have been supported through that. But you've got this boys' club that still exists, and they're still serving officers.
Yeah. Yeah.
To this day, they're still serving officers.
That's a really good point. It's going to lead to my question. If that person was a recruit police officer, or an RPO, as they're called in the trade. Yeah, they're called RPOs now.
News to me.
Recruit police officers, yeah. Anyway, I'm ahead of you now. What I was going to say is, I'm going to start rounding off in a minute, but there might be some people watching this who think, I wouldn't mind being a cop. I can't speak properly now. I wonder what it's like being there, whatever. Or what advice would you give to someone who was thinking of joining up? After all that, you've probably scared everybody away now.
I know. I'm sorry. It is in pockets. It is in pockets. And I think the more people that actually have the confidence to speak up, the better. So that would be one bit of it. I know it's not conducive to fitting in or belonging anywhere, but you're a police officer. You need to make good decisions now. And part of that, that is a test, and it is really, really difficult, but you have to do it. But my advice, generally speaking, I look back on my career, I've been involved in some things that I never thought possible, good and bad. You know, I had the genuine honour of policing the Queen's funeral, and that was I was exhausted, and I had huge blisters on my feet, don't get me wrong, but I look back on that with pride. And it's those events as well. I look around at all my colleagues and I'm full of pride. You know, I said to my partner, I said, you're not going to see me for a couple of weeks. You're going to have to pick up on childcare and the running of the house. And that was it, you know, was doing ridiculous shifts, as was everybody else. So there's a lot of pride there for my colleagues who were doing the same, who felt the same, because we worked for the Queen. And that was it was a big thing, certainly for longer serving officers, I think, that the Queen had sadly died, and it was an honour to be at her funeral. So, and that's one example of some of the great things that you can stand there with pride and say that.
Oh.
Very proud of.
Oh, it just says on here, Kate's recording has stopped. Kate's recording has stopped due to an incoming call. You got an incoming call coming?
I did have. I don't know if it was that.
Oh, okay.
Is it back on? Sorry, Martin.
No.
That was so good as well.
Yeah, no, that was good, but it probably was all right. Anyway, so I'm going to round off now anyway. I've probably got most of it.
Okay.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, sorry.
So what advice would you give to somebody who's actually thinking of joining up? There's going to be a number of people. I know you've covered this area, so let's try and do it again. But anyway, so there will be some younger people who are considering joining the police. Presumably, I know what a question I wanted to ask you. Would you say that being in the police force for 20 odd years that you were has made you a better person? And in what way would you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's made me a better person. Wait, has it? I'm really
think twice about that one.
I do. I'm thinking, but you know what? It's been a journey. It's been a learning journey. I think that actually it pulled out probably some worse sides of me.
Yeah.
And I'm really not talking about the public. I'm talking about my colleagues. I think I was really quite defensive about where I was, and I needed to belong. So I was quite like to keep everybody close, and that's my own, you know, issues there coming out to play. But has it maybe better?
What about your confidence and personal resilience, things like that, attributes like that?
If I look back, Martin, knowing me as a person, should I have ever joined the police? Probably not. I'm not a fan of conflict. I will do it. I'm courageous. You know, I will do it. I see the good in people. Again, probably not a strength as a police officer. I was good at my job though, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's given me some incredible experiences. I don't know where my life would have taken me if I hadn't have joined the police.
Right.
And I'm grateful for the experiences that the police have given me. the experience, the fun. I'm not, I've always got a story to tell. Always got a story to tell. Some are sad, some are funny, some are unbelievable. But it's given me the opportunity to serve my country and serve my country with pride. I've got the medals to prove it, and the memories, and the scars, like actual scars. And I have served my country with pride, and I'm very proud of my colleagues as well, who I stood alongside with, because we are incredibly courageous and we sacrifice a hell of a lot, whether that be Christmases, birthdays, time with family, mental health. It was an honor, and I'm glad it came to an end.
Okay, fair enough. So what advice would you give to new people that are thinking of joining up?
Join, go learn something, go and be part of something that's bigger than you. Takes a while to get used to seeing yourself in a police uniform, and it takes a while to realize you're out of it as well. And that's something I feel like I'm never off duty still. But join, you'll meet some incredible people, colleagues and the public. You'll meet some awful people, colleagues and the public. Like I said before, if it's in society, it's in any organisation, and you have to accept that it's not perfect. Be the person that that you can be. It's a great place to develop and experience and learn new skills. And there's so many opportunities in the Met. I don't think I made the most of it, really, on reflection.
Okay.
But I think
so. Nowadays, now you left the Met and you're now working as a DEI consultant. Is that what you actually do? So that's diversity. Sorry, what's that? Kinda. So it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's your area of special expertise, isn't it?
Yes.
You were doing that. You were doing that largely when I met you at the Met, sort of looking after that area. That's interesting. Okay. Well, anyway, I think we will talk about the DEI side of things on a later podcast, if you don't mind, if you've got time.
I'd be happy to,
because I think it's an important area, and it does need more coverage, I think. So, Kate Fletcher, thank you so much for spending your time with us. It's been really interesting, and it's lovely to see you again anyway, because I know that we know each other, and we did work together for a time at the Met in the Learning Development Department. So it's great to see you again. And
you too.
Thanks so much. Can I wish you the very best of luck in whatever you choose to do in the future?
You too, Martin. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Thanks very much for watching this episode. If you've got a question or a particular topic you'd like to have covered, please leave a comment in the comment section down below. Like the podcast to make sure your question gets seen, and also subscribed to get a reminder to watch the next one. Maybe your question or topic will be covered then.